South Sudan remains rather dangerous for journalists. South Sudan in the headlines again, all for the wrong reasons. An American journalist has been killed in fresh fighting between opposition and government troops at the weekend. And there are many other unanswered questions here. Now, the South Sudanese government has responded to the death of journalist Christopher Allen. Juba says he was not accredited and should not have been in that area. At least 19 people died in weekend clashes in the town of Kaya. The fighting broke out between opposition forces and government troops. Several soldiers are among the dead. Allen's body has been taken to the capital, Juba. Now, as we mentioned, Christopher Allen's body is currently in the capital, Juba. South Sudanese authorities are waiting for the journalist's family to collect his remains.
As of now, I'm speaking to you, nobody has officially come to SPLA General Headquarters claiming the body of the deceased. And that's why we are still having the body at Juba Military Hospital.
And of course, that situation in South Sudan remains a rather complex one. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more from Juba.
As far as we know, rebels supporting former Vice President Riek Machar attacked an army position at the weekend. Christopher Allen had been embedded with the rebels for around a week. It's believed 2 other journalists were with him. Who and where they are now remains unclear. Clashes between rebels and government troops are not new. Tens of thousands of people have been killed since violence broke out. More than 2 million are displaced, many into neighboring countries like Uganda. The UN says the refugee crisis is the worst in Africa since the Rwandan genocide in 1994. And UN peacekeepers have been heavily criticized for not doing enough to protect civilians. The UN mission in the country is seeking a more robust mandate to do that. But South Sudanese President Salva Kiir has been downplaying the refugee crisis. His government is also in an ongoing dispute with the UN over a regional peacekeeping mandate. It's a complex crisis with many elements and incredibly dangerous in parts of the country, which begs the question, what was Christopher Allen doing in that situation, and was he briefed about the dangers? Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
A complex crisis indeed. Let's get you more perspective on the developments out of the country now. I'm joined live in our Nairobi studios by Michael Arunga. He's an analyst on South Sudan. Michael, thank you for joining us here on the link. Now, South Sudan has been in crisis since 2013. That current conflict has been raging since 2013. Now, with the death of this American journalist, will that bring the situation, the crisis of South Sudan back on the international stage?
Beatrice, sadly, yes. I say sadly because thousands of South Sudanese are dying. You know, lots of statistics in terms of those who are perishing. But then the spotlight has shifted from the crisis because it has been on for a long time. But with the death of the American, the spotlight is bound to, again, get back to South Sudan. In 2014, February, I was in South Sudan at the height of the conflict. And we went over with a team of journalists from a local media station in Kenya, The Citizen. And we were almost lynched because they mistook us for Ugandans who were supporting the government of the day in South Sudan then. So the world needs to be talking about the crisis. Thousands of people are perishing, innocent people. So it's important that we don't wait until somebody from the West perishes so that the spotlight again shifts in terms of focus of news.
So thousands of people are perishing, and this has been said to be one of the worst refugee crises since the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. Though the government keeps saying, the government in South Sudan keeps saying that they are implementing the peace accord, but why are the two sides still fighting?
It's a complex issue around ethnicity, around control of resources and government, and these are the things that need to be sorted out. The Riek Machar and Salva Kiir from the Dinka and the Nuer communities. So they have their followers. We know that Riek Machar is not within the countries out in exile, but then there are followers that have wrapped up in terms of emotions, and that is where the focus actually is. In terms of the ethnic communities. These are the 2 largest ethnic groups in South Sudan, and that builds up a lot of emotion. But to sort out this issue, I think the two, Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, need to come together and have a discussion in terms of sorting this out, and their followers. That's the only way that this will be sorted out.
But Riek Machar is in exile in South Africa, so how exactly will this agreement be implemented?
It's unfortunate that we've had a series of meetings, we had a series of agreements being signed, and they are disabused. It's about respecting the agreements, having commitment towards sorting out the crisis, looking at the common person and the suffering that they are facing. Lots of women, lots of children have been in there, and it's extremely humanitarian catastrophe. Issues to do with access. They need to look at these things in terms of the wider context and in light of the South Sudanese, the common South Sudanese, who is really suffering against the backdrop of what's happening.
All right, Michael Arunga, thank you very much for your insights.